Welcome back to the channel, guys, and today we're going to be talking about opposition instructions. Now, I believe that the more you put into FM, the more you get out, and that's what we're going to be doing going forward on the channel. So I've not been uploading videos for the last couple of months, bit too long. Apologies for that firstly. Second of all, we're going to be now doing regular uploads every single week. So, opposition instructions. Right. I believe that this is one of the most important parts of FM. For people that are wanting to get really in depth in their FM saves, this is hopefully going to help you out, right? Because I believe that the more you put in, like I said, the more you get out. The more you're messing around and the more you get into the little areas of FM where you can get the little marginal gains, the more you'll enjoy it because you're seeing that your changes are making the difference. A few things to know before we dive into the intricacies of opposition instructions is, even if you get this perfectly, what I'm about to say, sometimes a player of world-class ability can just have a good game and it won't work. So this is not something that's going to work out every single time, because that would mean you win every game, and that's not football. But what will happen, what we'll do, is it will give you a better chance of winning games against teams that you otherwise might not get results against. Another thing to know is, if you're targeting their left winger, for example, and you want to go hard tackling, let's just say that's what you want to do, you also have to consider who's up against that left winger. So obviously my right back would be up against their left winger. So if I hard tackle this guy, but my right back hasn't got good tackling, it doesn't matter, because this guy's just going to go past him, because he can't tackle. Obviously your right back should be able to tackle, but that's just what I'm saying. So for another example is, if you want to press their centre halves, but your striker only has 6 work rate, he's probably going to get there too late, he's probably not going to do it properly, and it might upset your whole team shape. And the final thing to note is, let's say you're playing a counter-attacking system, right? You're wanting to sit behind the ball, you're a newly promoted team, and then you come into opposition instructions, you're playing, I don't know, let's say a Champions of the League, Man City or Liverpool or whatever, and you apply this logic I'm about to say, and you trigger press 3 of their defenders, a DM, and a midfielder. If you're in a counter-attacking system, that's going to drag your whole team out of shape, right? You're designed to sit back, but then you're applying this logic. What I wouldn't say is, if you're sat back and you're playing a big team, don't overly press their team, because then that pulls your players out of position, and the shape that you intended to set up to counter-attack will be all over the place and you'll get beat 4-0. So consider those first 3 things before we get into what we do in opposition instructions. Right, now that's all out of the way, we're going to be talking about tight marking. Why would you use it, when should you use it, and who else should you use it on? One of the first things I would say is if someone has low strength, right? So if you go into these players at 9 strength, 12 strength, and we're going to look down and we're going to find people with low strength, because not everyone in a team can be strong. If they are, they're a good team, then you might want to use this. 8 strength, Machoy Jallo. Right, this guy. What I might want to do against him is tight marking. Now, I also want to consider other things in terms of his off the ball. He's got 13, that's quite decent. Anticipation, 11, so he anticipates where the ball's going to be. So if you're tight marking someone, you might want to consider those things. But the main one I would say is strength. So if you're marking in real life, you're a stronger person and you're marking someone who's a bit weaker, you probably do want to get tight to them, because you could just move them out of the way, get the ball and play. Another reason why you might want to use tight marking is if someone has a poor first touch. So if you're tight to someone and they have a poor first touch, that means you're close enough to get the ball and then play on and then counter-attack, or whatever you want to do, however you're playing. You could also target someone if they're not the quickest. So if they're not the fastest player in the world, you can tight mark them, because if the marking went wrong, or they didn't get there in time, or they missed the tackle, then he's not likely to outpace you, and then you can get back in and probably have another go. That's just a few things to consider when you're targeting people with tight marking. Next, we're going to talk about trigger press. So next, we have closing down, and closing down has a few more ways to go about it. The first one, and the biggest one for me, is players with low composure. So if a player's got a low composure, well, let's find one. If they've got low composure, then they'll be rushed on the ball. Martin Calderon here, 10 composure. That's quite low for this level. Also as well, factor in what level you're playing at. So I'm in La Liga, but this is a team in the Copa del Rey and the 2nd division. But let's say I was playing Real Madrid, I'd probably be looking at like 12 as a low attribute. And on this team, probably 10 or 9. So always factor in the level you're playing at. You might find someone, if you're playing really low down, with like 2 composure. Definitely target them with closing down. Closing down could also be considered to be used on players with good decision making, because if a player has a good decision making and you give him plenty of time, that's just going to be carnage. You're going to get battered, and they're just going to be picking passes and making the right decisions constantly. If you notice a player in game as well who has a nervous body language or is just apprehensive or whatever, you can also target them for pressing, because obviously, like I say, if you're nervous, you don't want anyone in your face pressing you because you're going to make bad decisions. You could also look at player traits on players. I know that sounds like it's going into a bit more in depth, but this is what this video is about. So if things like dwells on ball or stops play, if a player's got that, it might be even coupled with low composure. You could target those guys because you want someone to be targeted who dwells on the ball. You might nick a ball, you might nick it, you might counter-attack, you might get 2 goals up in the first 10 minutes from that alone. Another thing you can do is set pressing traps, and what I mean by that is if you can set when you want players to receive the ball and when you want to press them. So for an example, if they have the ball in their fullback position with Sola or Rodriguez, right, what you could do is you could set to never press these guys. So they're advancing with the ball, and then you could funnel them inside with show onto weaker foot, right, which is another reason it's tied in. So you could never press them, show them onto their weaker foot, which means they're going to be coming forward with the ball and looking to their centre midfielders, right? That makes sense because you're shutting off the line. If after that point, what you want to do is those guys have come into this position, left wing back and right wing back, they're quite advanced up the pitch, and then you're not pressing them, but all of a sudden they're looking for passes into Diaz and Giallo or Calderon. What you could do is then press these guys heavily. So as soon as their fullbacks out of position, they're playing into midfield, then you're all over their midfielders, and then you've got space in behind their fullbacks, right, with your wingers. So there's little things you can do with pressing traps where you can decide not to press this guy, but then that means that he'll have all the time in the world to pass to this guy, but then you know where he's passing it, so you can target that player, take it off them as well. Next we have hard tackling, everyone's favourite. Everyone wants to go hard tackling on people because who doesn't want to injure someone's best player? But that's not as straightforward as it sounds. The first thing I would do with hard tackling is players with low bravery, because they don't want any of it. They don't want it, they don't fancy it. And I found someone here, Gaspar, this dude, with low bravery. He's also got low aggression, which means he's not going to go into tackles. If you hover over that, it says it does not necessarily affect a player's dirtiness, but their willingness to get stuck in. So he's not going to get stuck in, and he's not brave. It also reflects how committed a player is, often putting themselves into risky situations which must cause injury. So he's not going to do it, Gaspar. He doesn't fancy it. So what you can do with him is hard tackling. Now, consider the player, like I said before, that you're having do the hard tackling, because what you want is you want the player that's doing the hard tackling to be good at tackling, right? That makes total sense. So don't just consider that this guy's got low bravery. Now, if my right back can't tackle, it might not work. So make sure not only are you targeting the opposition player's weaknesses, but you're also elevating your player's strengths. Another thing I'm going to address is this button here, Ask Assistant. Now, I don't trust staff in Football Manager. I just don't trust them. I don't trust them with anything. Contracts, buying players, nothing. The only thing I trust is scouts with potential ability. That's pretty much it. So if you do Ask Assistant, and Javi Perez here wants to show their star winger down the flanks, but maybe it's a guy that wants to go down the flanks, he's a good dribbler, and he's also got hard tackling and all that good stuff, right? That could not only pull your team out of position, and you don't realise why, because you've accidentally just done this not thinking about it, right? Because I used to do that when I used to first play Football Manager. I used to Ask Assistant thinking, oh, he'll do it all right for me, he'll do it perfectly. Not true, they won't. Back to hard tackling. So you don't want to target people with hard tackling who are going to be players with good agility, good balance, good dribbling. I know that sounds obvious, but what a lot of people want to do is they see star player, hard tackle. Not as simple as that, because what if you're missing those tackles, right? That means that guy is on his own, flying down your wing, a centre-back has to come across, penalties, red cards, all of the bad things that you don't want to happen. So I know it sounds obvious when I'm saying don't do that to good players, but just consider it. Something I've also had a lot of success on over the years is hard tackling on players who have poor discipline problems and like to pick up yellow cards. So what I've had happen a lot of times over FM, I'm talking easily 50 to 60 occasions, is let's say there's a player in their midfield who gets a lot of yellow cards. Now, you might want to tackle him hard, because if you win the ball from him, you're in a position where your player has the ball right next to a player who has poor disciplinary problems. I've had a lot of times the second yellow cards where you win the ball off that dirty player, and then he's right next to your player, and he just tackles him, trips him up, second yellow, red card. So that's something else you can do, and it does work. And the last reason you might want to use hard tackling is if they have a striker that's isolated up front. So what I mean by that is if you're probably the stronger team and you're wanting to nullify the threat of a target man or a big striker up front, if their long balls come towards him and his job is to hold the ball up while other people come into play, what you might want to do is get one of your best centre-backs to tight mark him, to hard tackle him, and then you can win the ball before he can bring all his teammates into play and counter-attack you. And last but not least, show onto foot. Now this is more to do with how you play. So let's say, for example, you've got 3 at the back and you've got a defensive midfielder, or 4 at the back, 2 defensive midfielders, and your strongest area of your team is in the middle. You probably want to target their opposition wingers and their fullbacks to come inside, right? Where all run into traffic, where all your guys are, and they might just come inside, get tackled, or come inside and not find a little pass or what. They might shoot from long range, and that's what you want, right? Against big teams, you want them shooting from long range, because the chances of that going in is a lot lower than if they're inside the box, obviously. To add on to that, when you're funneling players inside, let's say, for example, you could also set it up with the new feature in the game, which is trap inside, the pressing trap. It says trap inside asks the team to set a pressing trap designed to funnel the ball into central areas and force turnovers in advantageous areas. So like I said, it couples up with a pressing trap earlier that I was talking about, but also with show onto foot. So if you're showing their wingers inside, you can couple it with that, and then when they come inside, your players know, oh, they're inside, bang, let's go and hit them, right? So that's something else you can consider. There's also the really obvious one, where if a player has a really weak left foot, then show them onto their left foot, or the really weak right foot, show them onto their right foot. You could also look for the trait avoids weaker foot, because then you could target them, put them on the weaker foot, and they're going to be struggling because they're going to want to avoid it, and you put them on it, and they're just going to lose the ball. And the last thing you might want to do with show onto foot is, let's say they have a player like a Giroud type, or someone good in the air, basically, right? They have a target man type striker, then you probably want their wingers to come inside. You don't want them going outside, crossing it in. That's not what you want. You can also do the same with the fullbacks. You can show them onto the weaker foot inside, or if they're inverted wing back, show them onto their strong foot, which is fine because you want them to go inside, right? That's fine. You just want them to go inside. You don't want them crossing to that guy with 17 jumping reach, 18 aggression, bravery, all the works, and he just nods goals in, and you're wondering what happened. Now, obviously, this all goes out the window if you're playing against Haaland, right? There's very little you can do against someone like that. Now, what you probably want to do with players like that is limit the supply towards them. So you might want to push players inside where Haaland's not as good at dribbling. So you just want to look at the lesser of the two evils that you've got going against you, because this is not possible to target every single player and it work 100% of the time. It's just not going to happen. Alternatively to that, if they have a small striker and he's not good in the air, you might want to make their wingers go down the wing, because when they're crossing it in, your big centre-backs are just going to head the ball out for fun. So I've just jumped over to my stream save just to show you something that I sometimes set up over the years, and it's had a lot of success, and it's usually against teams like against Liverpool here, who I'm about to play next. And it's something that gets you good results against top teams and limits them in terms of chances. Now, like I said, this is my stream save, and we are live on Twitch, and the link's below, from 4 PM every single day except Mondays and Thursdays. We stream until about 7. Also, guys, hit the subscribe button. That would be absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much. And, okay, let's get back into the video. So, you're facing an elite team like Liverpool. I'll just, for example, show you Jose Roca, their striker, right? This guy. Obviously, I've got attribute masking on, but you can see, you can get the general gist. He's a bit of everything. He's 6 foot, he's an elite striker. He's got everything about him. Literally everything. So, there's not much I can do against him other than pray. But, something you can maybe help with is, if I look at my formation, for example, and I have 2 DMs in here, and that's how I like to play. And we are 3rd in the Premier League at the moment, but we have probably the 15th best team in the Premier League, and our media prediction this year is 15th. Right, so we're about 15th, so we're a relegation battling team, but we are in 3rd in February, so we're doing fantastically. So what you can do is, if you go into this screen, is use show onto foot. Right, basically, this is one of the ones for me where you can get the other teams playing how you want them to play a little bit. So what I'd like to do, or what I've done in the past, is put their right back on his left foot, put the left back on the right foot, because then they'll come inside. Now that sounds stupid because they've got Declan Rice, Xavi Simons, and a great Nugent here, who actually isn't their starting player, but he's their backup player and he's very good. And then you can also have these two coming inside, right? It might sound stupid because like their winger, Coronas here, is an either-footed Portuguese winger, and he's probably got a good left foot. But I'm not considering that at the moment. I'm considering where I want their players to go in the game to give me the best chance. And I've got two defensive midfielders who are good, strong defensive midfielders. So I want their players to run into those two as much as possible. I don't want their wingers going past my wing backs because my wing backs aren't as good as my defensive midfielders, right? Another thing you can do is set their left centre back onto his right foot and then right centre back onto his left foot. So that means when the right back has the ball, comes into the left centre back. So right centre back, and then when the right centre back gets the ball, he goes into the left centre back, and you're basically just making them funnel the ball across their back four. Their DM you can set onto weaker foot, but he's in the middle, so it doesn't really matter which foot he's on, but you want him on the weaker foot, because why not? Also, another thing you could do is Xavi Simons here, you can put him on his left foot, so when he gets the ball, he doesn't look to go out to the wing. It looks to come inside, and the game gets all claustrophobic, it gets all condensed in the midfield, and that's what you want. You want him to give them less space, because Liverpool, if they expand and they make the pitch big, you're in trouble. And then obviously, lastly, you can make their left centre midfielder on his right foot. And then obviously another thing, same reason as to why I did Declan Rice on his weak foot, I could use weak foot for him. So that way, with that setup, what will happen is all their players will look to come inside. Now that sounds like a nightmare, but I've got two defensive midfielders like I said, and that should help me out. Now it might not, like I said before at the start of the video, their star players might just have a worldie of a game, I might get beat 4-0. It doesn't happen every single time. But I have had a lot of success with this. And then also, you could also, if you want, if you find like a little chink in their armour, maybe they've got a player that's not as good, or the guy that's injured and their backups come in, you could target him on the counter-attack. Maybe you could hard tackle him and you could press him. But I have done this a lot with show onto foot, and it has worked quite a lot. I just thought I'd throw that in at the end of the video, so you guys could maybe think about that and use it in your saves. And yeah, so that's going to be the end of the video. No more waffling from me. Please hit the subscribe button like I said before. And until next time, thank you for watching. Goodbye.